Good evening and welcome to Storytime. The book I've chosen is called The Twits by Roald Dahl, and members of Year 3 will be delighted to tell you that we've read this from cover to cover many times in Storytime. It is quite a disgusting book. The two characters, Mr. and Mrs. Twit. Mr. Twit is very hairy. Mrs. Twit is disgusting. And they like to play tricks on each other. So I thought I'd start a little bit in. I'm going to look at a few tricks that they play on each other. So the chapter's called The Glass Eye. You can play a lot of tricks with glass eyes because you can take it out and pop it back in anytime you like. You can bet your life Mrs. Twit knew all the tricks. One morning she took out a glass eye and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking his beer slowly. The froth made a white ring on the hairs around his mouth. He wiped the white froth onto his sleeve and wiped his sleeve on his trousers. "You're plotting something," Mrs. Twit said, keeping her back turned as he wouldn't see that she'd taken out her glass eye. "Whenever you go all quiet like that, I know very well you're plotting something." Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plotting away like mad. He was trying to think up a really nasty trick he could play on his wife that day. "You'd better be careful," Mrs. Twit said, "because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a wombat." "Oh, do shut up, you old hag," Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer, and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was about to play on the old woman. Suddenly, as Mr. Twit tipped the last drop of beer down his throat, he caught the sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring up at him from the bottom of the mug. It made him jump. "I told you I was watching you," cackled Mrs. Twit. "I've got eyes everywhere, so you'd better be careful." She's so nice. Next chapter's called The Frog. To pay her back for the glass eye in his beer, Mr. Twit decided he would put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed. Not very kind, I'm thinking. He caught a big one down by the pond and carried it back secretly in a box. That night, when Mrs. Twit was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, Mr. Twit slipped the frog into Mrs. Twit's bed. Then he got into his own bed and waited for the fun to begin. Mrs. Twit came back and climbed into her bed and put out the light. She lay there in the dark, scratching her tummy. Then all at once, she felt something cold and slimy crawling over her feet. She screamed. "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Twit said. "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit, bouncing about. "There's something in my bed!" "Oh, I bet it's one of those giant skilly wigglers I saw on the floor just now," Mr. Twit said. "That what?" screamed Mrs. Twit. "I tried to kill it, but it got away," Mr. Twit said. "It's got teeth like screwdrivers." "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Save me! It's all over my feet." "It'll bite your toes off," Mr. Twit said. Mrs. Twit fainted. Mr. Twit got out of bed and fetched a jug of cold water. He poured the water over Mrs. Twit's head to revive her. The frog crawled up from under the sheets to get nearer the water. It started jumping about on the pillow. Frogs love water. This one was having a good time. When Mrs. Twit came to, the frog had just jumped onto her face. This is not a nice thing to happen to anyone in bed at night. She screamed again. "By golly, it is a giant skilly wiggler," Mr. Twit said. "It'll bite off your nose." Mrs. Twit leapt out of bed and flew downstairs and spent the night on the sofa. The frog, meanwhile, went to sleep on her pillow. Well, at least somebody had a good night's sleep. The next chapter is called Wormy Spaghetti. Now, this is the first episode of The Twits. If you would like to see more and hear more, I am sure I'll be able to read some more at a later date. Thanks very much for listening. Speak to you soon. Bye.